The strange invitation. I never expected my life to take a sharp turn into the unknown on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The day began like any other coffee brewing. The usual emails flooding my inbox and the dull hum of city life outside my window. But then, just as I was about to leave the office, I found an envelope slipped under my door. It was unusual, no return address, no markings, just a heavy cream-colored envelope, sealed with a dark red wax stamp, the kind you only see in movies or old books. Curiosity got the better of me. I broke the seal and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The handwriting was elegant, almost archaic, and the ink slightly smudged, as if it had been written in haste. The message was brief. You are cordially invited to an unforgettable experience. Follow the enclosed directions at midnight. Do not bring anyone. Come alone. No signature, no explanation. I stared at the paper, 1,000 questions swirling in my head. Who sent this? What kind of experience were they talking about? It felt like something out of a thriller novel, but here I was holding an actual invitation to ... something unknown. The directions were to a place I had never heard of, a remote cabin deep in the woods just outside of town. A location I knew only from vague rumors and old urban legends. I tried to shrug it off, thinking it must be some kind of prank or a marketing stunt. But there was something about the handwriting, the wax seal, it felt too personal, too deliberate to be random. That night, sleep evaded me. I kept picturing that cabin, isolated and dark, surrounded by dense trees that whispered in the wind. My mind raced with scenarios. Was it a secret party, a surprise, or something far worse? Despite my misgivings, something inside me urged me to go. Call it curiosity, or perhaps a need to break the monotony of my life. At exactly midnight, I grabbed my coat and the invitation and slipped out the front door. The drive was airy, empty roads flanked by shadowy trees, the only sound my car's engine and the occasional rustling of leaves. My GPS blinked at me uncertainly, as if it too was hesitant to lead me to the destination. After nearly an hour, I arrived at a narrow dirt path that matched the directions perfectly. The cabin appeared suddenly through the thick fog, an old wooden structure, weathered by years of rain and neglect. Its windows were dark, and the front door hung slightly ajar, creaking with the cold wind. A shiver ran down my spine, but I told myself this was just a place someone chose for a gathering. Taking a deep breath, I stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and a faint smell of something rotten. My footsteps echoed on the wooden floor as I scanned the room, a fireplace cold and unused. Furniture covered in white sheets, and a large mirror hanging crookedly on the far wall. No one was there then. I heard it, a faint whisper. At first I thought it was the wind, but the voice seemed to call my name, soft and urgent. My heart hammered in my chest as I followed the sound down a narrow hallway. The whispers grew louder, more desperate, but when I reached the end, the corridor opened into an empty room. There was nothing but an old journal lying on the floor. I hesitated before picking it up. Its leather cover was cracked and the pages yellowed. As I flipped through, I realized it was a diary, entries dating back decades. The handwriting was jagged, frantic at times, describing strange happenings in the cabin, shadows moving on their own, voices calling from the woods, and something or someone lurking just beyond sight. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. The room plunged into darkness, and the whispers turned into guttural growls. I was not alone. The forgotten cabin, the slam of the door jolted me so violently that I nearly dropped the journal. The darkness swallowed the room whole, no moonlight, no street lamp glow. It's just an oppressive blackness that felt like it was pressing in on me from all sides. My breath hitched in my throat, and my heart thundered like a drum in my ears. I fumbled for my phone, but the screen was dead. No signal, no flashlight, nothing. It was as if the cabin had swallowed not only the light, but every thread of the modern world. I forced myself to stay calm. Panic wouldn't help. I could hear those guttural growls again, closer this time. They weren't quite human, but not animal either. Rough, rasping sound, like something struggling to form words but failing. The journal in my hand suddenly felt heavier, as if it held the weight of the cabin's entire history. Flipping through it by touch alone, I found the last few entries. The handwriting was nearly illegible, scrawled in desperation. They come with the night, the shadows that hunger. This place is cursed. Do not trust the voices. If you hear your name, do not answer. My skin crawled. Was the journal warning me? I gripped it tightly and moved toward the door, hoping to force it open. I didn't budge. Then I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, approaching from the hallway behind me. My pulse quickened, and I backed away until I hit the wall. The growls turned into words, low and guttural, but unmistakable. "Why are you here?" a voice rasped. It sounded broken, like it had been trapped between worlds. I swallowed hard. "I received an invitation," I stammered, hoping the sound of my voice would keep the creature at bay. There was silence, then a soft chuckle that sent chills down my spine. "Invitation?" the voice repeated, more amused than angry. "You should have stayed away. This place, it remembers." The walls seemed to close in, the air thick with decay and something metallic blood. I strained my eyes but saw nothing in the pitch-black room. The journal suddenly slipped from my grasp and fell to the floor with a dull thud. As I bent to pick it up, the door creaked, just a tiny crack of light spilling in from the hallway. Hope flared inside me. I rushed to it, pushing with all my might, and finally, the door gave way. I spilled out into the corridor, heart pounding. The hallway stretched long and narrow, the wallpaper peeling and stained with age. Faint flickering lights danced along the ceiling, like old lanterns struggling to stay alive. Shadows twisted and shifted along the walls, as if the cabin itself was breathing. I had no idea where to go. The journal felt like the only clue I had to survive. I clutched it close and stepped forward. Then I heard a soft sobbing coming from one of the rooms. It was a woman's cry, desperate and broken. I hesitated, torn between fleeing and investigating. Curiosity won. I pushed open the door to a small bedroom. Moonlight filtered through a cracked window, illuminating a woman sitting on the floor, knees drawn up to her chest. Her long hair was tangled, her eyes hollow and glassy. She looked up at me with a mixture of fear and relief. "Thank God," she whispered. "You came." I swallowed my own fear. "Who are you? What's happening here?" She took a shaky breath. "My name is Eliza. I've been trapped here for what feels like forever. This cabin, it feeds on us. It traps the living and the dead, blurring the lines until no one knows what's real." "Feeds? That's traps. What do you mean?" She glanced over her shoulder nervously. "What?" "There's a darkness here, something ancient. It's been here longer than anyone can remember. It traps souls, those who enter, those who die here. That's why no one comes back." A cold shiver ran down my spine. "Why did you stay?" Eliza looked away, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Because I'm waiting for someone to help me break the curse, but no one ever does." I felt a mix of dread and determination. Maybe I'm that someone. She gave a faint smile, but her eyes were still full of despair. "You have to be careful. The cabin doesn't like visitors. It will try to trick you, to make you doubt everything." Before I could ask more, a sudden thud echoed from downstairs. The sobbing stopped. Eliza's eyes widened. "They're coming," she whispered. "We don't have much time." I gripped the journal tighter. "What do we do?" Eliza stood shakily and took my hand. "We find the heart of the cabin. There's a place down below, an old cellar. The curse began there. If we can destroy it, maybe we can escape." The thought of a cellar in a place like this filled me with dread, but I knew there was no choice. Together, we hurried down the creaking stairs, the darkness pressing closer with every step. At the bottom, we found a heavy wooden door, covered in strange symbols etched into the wood symbols I had seen in the journal, repeated over and over in frantic scribbles. Eliza produced a small, flickering candle from her pocket. "This will keep the darkness at bay, but only for a little while." I lit the candle, and its weak flame illuminated the room beyond. A stone chamber with walls stained dark. A cold air that smelled of rot and despair. In the center lay a large stone altar, cracked and worn. "This is where it started," Eliza said, voice trembling, "where the first sacrifice was made, the source of the curse." Suddenly, the candle flickered violently. Shadows surged along the walls, twisting into grotesque shapes. I felt something brush against my arm, a cold, clammy touch. "Have to act fast," Eliza urged. "Destroy the altar." I looked at the altar, then back at her. "How? How?" She pulled a small knife from her belt, its blade old but sharp. "This blade was used in the first ritual. It's the only thing that can break the curse." My hands shook as I took the knife. the weight of the moment settling like a stone in my stomach. I raised it above the altar and brought it down with all my strength. The moment the blade struck, a terrible sound filled the room, a mix of screams, growls, and shattering glass. The walls trembled, the shadows writhed, and a cold wind whipped through the chamber, extinguishing the candle. I was plunged into darkness once more, but this time it was different. The growls faded, replaced by a haunting silence. The air felt lighter, almost breathable. I looked at Eliza. "Is it over?" She nodded, but her face was pale. "For now. But the cabin, it never forgets. It will always be watching." We made our way back upstairs, the dawn's first light creeping through the windows. As we stepped outside, the cabin behind us seemed to sigh, the heavy wooden door closing on its own. I knew I had survived something I could barely explain. The invitation, the cabin, the darkness, they were real. And whatever I had unleashed that night, I was certain it wasn't finished with me. Whispers in the dark, the sun had barely risen when Elisa and I finally stepped out of the cabin. The heavy wooden door slammed shut behind us with a finality that echoed through the quiet forest. For a brief moment, the world seemed still. The oppressive weight of the night lifted like a suffocating fog. But I knew better. The cabin was not done with me. We stood in the clearing, breathing in the cold morning air. Eliza looked exhausted but resolute. "You did well," she said quietly. "Most people don't make it this far." I forced a weak smile, but inside I felt hollow, as if something essential had been torn from me in that dark cellar. The knife in my pocket felt like a talisman, yet also a curse. We had destroyed the altar. The heart of the cabin is evil. But at what cost? I asked her the question that gnawed at me. What happens now? Can we really leave this place behind? Eliza's eyes darkened. The cabin's hold is stronger than the altar. We might have broken its immediate power, but the darkness still lurks. In the woods. In the night. In the corners of your mind. She paused, glancing nervously into the trees. It whispers. It waits. The word sent a chill down my spine. Whispers. I suddenly understood why the journal warned me not to answer when I heard my name. The cabin's evil wasn't just a place. It was alive. A hungry entity that fed on fear and doubt. We started the trek back to my car, the forest seeming alive with subtle movements just beyond my vision. The air grew colder, and the shadows stretched longer despite the growing daylight. Every crunch of leaves beneath our feet felt unnaturally loud, like the forest itself was listening. As we walked, I felt a strange sensation, a faint vibration at the back of my mind, like a voice trying to reach me through static. I stopped and pressed my hands to my temples, trying to clear the fog. "Do you hear that?" I asked. Eliza nodded grimly. "The whispers never stop. They try to lure you back. They play with your memories, twisting them until you can't tell what's real." My head throbbed as images flickered behind my eyes, faces, places, moments from my past warped into something sinister. I blinked hard, trying to ground myself. "Focus," Eliza urged.
"Don't listen."
I shook my head, the whispers growing louder, more insistent. Then I heard it clearly. My name, carried on the wind like a cruel joke. Jason. Jason. I spun around, heart racing, but saw nothing. The trees stood silent, their branches swaying gently. My breath caught in my throat. Was it real, or just my mind unraveling? Elisa grabbed my arm. "Come on, we need to get out of here." We quickened our pace, the forest closing in, and every shadow seemed to twist into something alive. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see a pair of glowing eyes, or a shadowy figure slipping between the trees. Back at the car, I fumbled with the keys, hands shaking. The engine roared to life, and as we sped down the winding road, the whispers faded, replaced by the low hum of tires on asphalt. For a moment, I allowed myself to hope that maybe, just maybe, the nightmare was over. That night, I couldn't sleep. The shadows in my apartment seemed to stretch and pulse, and the whispering began anew. Softer, but no less haunting. I tried to focus on the mundane sounds of the city outside, but the voices in my head wouldn't stop. I paced the room, clutching the journal and the knife. The words on the pages swam before my eyes, as if the ink was alive, moving like tiny snakes across the paper. Then I heard it again, the unmistakable sound of my name, this time right next to my ear. "Jason." I spun around, but the room was empty. The hairs on my neck stood on end. I wasn't alone. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging me into darkness. My heart hammered as I groped for my phone. No signal. No light. A cold breath brushed against my neck. "Why did you leave me?" whispered a voice barely audible. I froze. "Who's there?" demanded, my voice trembling. Silence, then a soft sob. I fumbled for the knife, holding it out like a shield. The room seemed to warp and twist around me, shadows gathering at the edges, creeping closer. Then the voice, clearer this time. "You promised." I shook my head, fighting the fear that threatened to swallow me whole. "I don't know what you're talking about." Sobbing grew louder, filling the room until it felt like the walls would collapse under the weight of sorrow. Suddenly, the journal flew open on the floor, pages flipping wildly until they stopped at a page I hadn't seen before. My eyes scanned the words, and my blood ran cold. The one who breaks the curse must not only destroy the altar, but face the one bound to it. The first sacrifice. Only then will the darkness release its hold. First sacrifice. I stared at the words, realization dawning like a blade slicing through my mind. Eliza. The woman I'd met in the cabin, the one trapped in despair. I had thought she was a victim, but what if she was something more? Something tied to the darkness itself. Before I could make sense of it, the whispering returned. Not outside, but inside my own head. Jason ... Come back. Trapped with no escape, the clearing felt alive, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Liza's gaze bore into me, those black, hollow eyes revealing nothing but an endless abyss of pain and something far darker beneath. The wind stopped, and the whispered voices faded into an eerie silence. Time felt suspended. I was trapped. Her words echoed in my mind, haunting me. I was the first sacrifice, bound to this place. Help me end this. But I knew there was a terrible catch. The curse didn't simply disappear when the altar was destroyed. It demanded a price. It needed a vessel. And somehow, I felt it was looking at me. Liza stepped closer, her hands trembling but determined. "You don't have to do this alone. We can end it together." But doubt clawed at my heart. Could I trust her? Was she truly a victim, or was she the curse itself, waiting to pass her torment on to the next soul? And if I refused, what would happen? "Why me?" I whispered, voice barely audible. "Why did it choose me?" She hesitated, then answered softly. "Because you were curious. Because you came alone. Because the curse feeds on the living, and it needs a new anchor." My mind spiraled, panic rising like a wave threatening to drown me. I looked around, desperate for a way out, but the forest seemed endless, the shadows thickening with every breath. Suddenly, the ground beneath my feet trembled, and the trees warped, their branches reaching like twisted claws. The clearing shifted, and I realized I was no longer standing in the same place. The forest had closed in, trapping me in a maze of darkness and dead leaves. I was caught in the curse's grip. My breaths came in ragged gasps as I stumbled through the twisting woods. Every direction looked the same, gnarled branches scraping at my skin, roots threatening to trip me, and the eerie silence pressing down like a tomb. Doom! The whispers returned, soft at first, then rising in an overwhelming chorus. Jason, ... Jason, ... come back? They weren't just voices anymore, they were memories. Shadows of my past, distorted and warped by the darkness. Faces I loved and lost, moments I wished I could forget, all twisted into cruel mockeries. I collapsed to my knees, the weight of regret and fear crushing me. Was this the curse's true power to imprison me not just physically, but mentally? To trap me in my own darkest thoughts and never let me go? Through the fog of despair, I heard Eliza's voice calling me. But it wasn't the comforting voice from before. It was distant, cold, like she was somewhere far away, or slipping further into the darkness herself. "Jason, fight it," she urged, but her words faded like a dying ember. I forced myself to stand, gripping the knife tightly as if it were a lifeline. The journal felt heavier than ever in my other hand, its pages fluttering wildly as if alive. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows ahead of man, or what looked like one. His eyes glowed with unnatural light, and his skin was pale and cracked, like porcelain breaking apart. "You cannot escape," he said, voice like grinding stone. "This place is yours now." My blood ran cold. The man, or whatever he was, stepped forward, the forest growing darker behind him. "Who are you?" I demanded, backing away. He smiled, a cruel, broken grin. "I am the first, the one who bound this curse here. The sacrifice who failed." A rush of memories hit me, flashes of fire, blood, screaming. The journal S pages stopped flipping on a name I hadn't understood before. Nathaniel Blackwood. "Eliza," I whispered, the pieces clicking together. "You're him?" The figure's eyes flickered, and in a sudden shift, the pale man transformed into Eliza, the same hollow woman who had begged me for help. "I am both victim and monster," she said, voice breaking. "I am trapped between life and death, cursed to guard this place and lure others into the darkness." I felt sick. The woman I thought was desperate for salvation was bound to the curse itself. She was the curse. "No," I said, shaking my head. "There has to be another way." Her smile was bitter. "There isn't. The curse demands a price. Brett, someone must stay." The whispers surged again, surrounding us, closing in like a living nightmare. The forest twisted further, and I realized the truth I'd feared all along. I was already becoming part of the curse. Panic clawed at me. I ran blindly through the shifting woods, the trees closing off every path. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but escape was impossible. The whispers followed, cruel and relentless. Jason, come back." Then I heard the sound of Eliza's voice, closer, softer. "Jason, you can break free, but only if you accept what you are." The words chilled me. Accept what I was. What did that mean? Was I becoming like her? Like the first sacrifice, bound to the curse forever? I stumbled into a small clearing where a shallow pit lay open. Inside, faint glowing symbols circled a worn piece of cloth, the same one from the journal, stained and frayed. I reached out, and the moment my fingers brushed it, memories flooded back. The ritual, the pain, the sacrifice that cursed this place. I collapsed, overwhelmed. "Eliza," I whispered, "tell me how to end this." She appeared beside me, her face softer now, almost human. "You must take my place. Bind yourself to the curse willingly. Only then will it be free from me." "No," I choked out. "I can't." "But if you refuse," she said sadly, "the curse will consume you, piece by piece, until there's nothing left." I was trapped in a nightmare with no escape. Hours, maybe days passed. Time lost meaning as I sat in that cursed clearing, torn between surrender and survival. The whispers never ceased. They promised release and threatened oblivion. The knife and journal lay beside me, useless without the strength to use them. Then, in the deepest moment of despair, I realized something. The curse was powerful, but it was also bound by fear. It fed on my terror, on my doubt. I had a choice. I took a shaky breath, standing slowly. I gripped the knife and journal and looked into the dark woods. "I'm not afraid," I said, voice steady, despite the shaking inside. The shadows recoiled, the whispers faltered. Eliza smiled faintly. "Then maybe you can end this after all." The terrifying truth revealed. The forest froze when I said the words. "I'm not afraid." Something shifted within the air, and within me, the shadows recoiled, and the whispers fell silent. Eliza, no longer pleading, no longer monstrous, stood at the edge of the clearing, her face unreadable. "You've said what many never could," she said softly. "But strength alone won't save you." "I'm not trying to save myself," I replied. "I'm ending this." Her eyes narrowed. "Even if it means destroying me." I hesitated just for a moment, but I didn't flinch. "Yes," a small, sad smile. "Then you're closer than you know." The journal began to shake in my hands. At the back, stitched into the binding, was a folded page. No uncommonly deep red carvings pressed into the parchment. The curse must end where it began. The knife in my hand pulsed with heat. I turned to Eliza. "Where?" She pointed behind me. I turned saw it, twisted, rotted tree, split down the center. Beneath it lay ancient stones, cracked and moss-covered, far older than the cabin. "This is the true heart," she whispered, "where the first blood was spilled. The altar was just a distraction." It all made sense. The cabin hadn't created the curse, it was built around it. Prison for something ancient. Hungry, you have one chance, Eliza said. Bury the knife in the tree's heart. I'd spill your blood. Willingly, in defiance. It's the only thing it can't consume. I stepped forward. The whispers screamed back to life. Voices, curses, memories, twisted into nightmares. But I kept walking. At the base of the tree, a hollow pulsed, like a dying heartbeat. I'm not afraid, I whispered. And I drove the knife into my palm. Pain exploded, blood spilled. The tree screamed loud and human. The bark cracked. Roots writhed beneath me. The forest howled. Shadows shrieked. The curse fought to survive. But I stood my ground. Then stillness. Eliza was gone. In her place stood a man pale, no longer twisted. Nathaniel Blackwood. The first sacrifice. You freed me, he said, and vanished. The tree crumbled into ash. The night felt clean. I don't remember getting back to the car. 1 minute I was in the forest, the next I was staring at my blood-stained hand behind the wheel. At home, I burned the journal, buried the knife. But I kept the scar. Weeks passed. Life returned quiet, almost peaceful. The nightmares stopped. The shadows stayed still. I convinced myself it was over. Till tonight. Sitting alone in my apartment, scrolling through messages, I saw a tan envelope on the coffee table, cream-colored, no stamp, no address, sealed in dark red wax. I hadn't placed it there. I stared at it for an hour before opening it with shaking hands. One sheet of paper. Elegant, archaic handwriting. You are cordially invited to an unforgettable experience. Midnight, come alone. No directions, no cabin this time. Just the invitation. Then I heard it trite beside my ear. A whisper, Jason. I dropped the letter. This isn't over. The cabin may be gone. The altar shattered. But something remains. It wasn't the building. It was the hunger. The invitation was never just a message. It was a door. And once you answer it, you never really leave.